Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to Collapse Times. I guess it's our final Collapse Times of 2025. It's kind of wild. Hope everyone's doing well tonight. I'm going to wait just a minute till I actually see some people here because for some reason it doesn't quite look like I'm all the way live yet. But I'm just going to give it a minute. Something's a little weird here. I feel like I'm on the wrong stream, maybe. No, I'm not. Okay, it does look like there's some people here. Okay, I see two people here. It's just being a little weird for a second. Give me one more moment here, and then we'll get started. All right. All right. Hi, Brittany. Good to see you. Okay. Hello, Virginia, 1998. Good to see you too. All right, let's get into it here. A little bit of housekeeping at the top as usual. If you haven't seen it, my 2026 astrology forecast video is out talking about the personal impacts of the outer planet transits that are happening next year. There's a whole lot of them. So check that out if you didn't already. My mundane astrological forecast for 2026 is in the pipes. It's going to be called Doomer Astrology 2026. And yeah, there are a lot of things that we do need to talk about on this channel in terms of actual collapse and the likelihood of different events, different energies that we can anticipate next time, with a whole bunch of planets changing signs and then a whole bunch of squares, oppositions over the summer. It's pretty intense energy. So we do need to talk about that. But I hope that the personal 2026 forecast gives you some hope and some inspiration about using this year to overcome your own limitations and step into your power more and, you know, kind of end the liminality that we've been in for all of 2025. So I hope that we can use the energies for our own personal growth and optimization as much as possible. I hope that video gives you some thoughts on how you might do that personally. If you want to know more about what's coming in for you as an individual in 2026, my roadmap readings are open. There's a link in the description box to purchase one. And I think I forgot to link the Instagram post, but there's an Instagram post that describes all the details of what you get in the roadmap reading. It's about an hour-long recorded reading that uses astrology and tarot to lay out the trajectory of your year. And I've been offering them, I think, for actually 6 years. I think I said 5 years last time, but it's been 6 years. And they are very accurate according to many, many repeat clients. So let me know if you have any questions about that, or you can purchase one at the link below. Also, you can get on my email list if you want to stay in touch off of social media. The link below for that is actually the one that says ebook. You can get a free ebook if you join the email list. And of course, if you want to support this channel and all of my free content, please become a channel member. It's only $3 a month. So much love to all the channel members out there. All right, let's get into the astrology of the moment to start. We're going to be talking a little bit about Epstein, and we're going to be talking about Noam Chomsky today, but we're going to start just with where we're at right now. So the main things that I see here that we can lean into over the next week that I want to address are, so you can see this stellium is already here in Capricorn between Venus, the Sun, and Mars. And this is going to build, and basically these planets are all going to travel together over the next 3-4 weeks. They're going to make a T-square in alignment with Jupiter and Chiron in their square. So I'm going to click through and talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But in this moment, we just have these 3 planets starting to gather together. So we have some strong Capricorn energy in the picture that wasn't here, not too long ago. Hopefully you can feel that change. The full moon is in Cancer next Saturday. It's at 13 degrees of Cancer. Doesn't actually look like the most interesting full moon in the world. Doesn't make any major aspects or anything. And then January 2nd, next Friday, Chiron will be stationing direct. So when an outer planet is stationing, its energy tends to be more activated in the collective. So you might be feeling some of Chiron's energy right now. And let's just talk about all of this stuff together. And I'm going to talk about what's coming up over the next couple of weeks, because actually I probably will not be live here for the next at least 2 weeks. So if I click through a little here, so you can just watch this Capricorn space basically as we move through the new year and then into the first couple weeks of the year. You can see how, slowly Venus, I think it's January 8th. What day is Venus exactly conjunct to the sun? That's an important time. Right around here, January 6th. And then a little bit later, Mars is conjunct to the sun. Yeah, so these energies at the very beginning of the year are very, very transformative. And so you can see, if we keep going, see how, these guys are all in this T-square with Jupiter and Chiron that have just basically been in a square since October. Mercury is getting into the picture here too. So these first couple of weeks of the year are a chance to really use Capricorn's energy. Capricorn is good at applying itself. It's good at it's very ambitious usually. So it's good at seeing a goal and then making the plan to get to the goal, and then also actually taking the action, having the follow through on the plan. Capricorn is good at all of those things. So it's a pretty, even without the T-square, all of this Capricorn would be a pretty potent energy to have kind of gathering going into the beginning of the year. Mars, especially in Capricorn, is exalted and just is very happy there, feels very confident. You can really picture Mars as that mountain goat, just jumping and leaping over the rocky, craggy cliffs and just feeling like it knows what it's doing. So this energy, to go back to where we're at now, this Capricorn energy is already starting to build. And especially if you know where Capricorn is in your chart, you can start to really pay attention to that and think about how you're applying these energies. Since the conjunctions to the sun are both a little bit later, and I would probably have a lot more to say about them if I thought about them more. I'm not going to talk about that too much now, but individually, each of those conjunctions between Venus and the sun and Mars and the sun are important. And I wonder when Venus and Mars are conjunct. Let's see when that is. Oh, that's also on January 7th. My gosh. So it really is all happening at the same time. I don't know how rare that is. That seems to me like it would be pretty rare to have those three planets gathering so close together all at the same time. The sun and Venus are, they never go very far from one another, but Mars isn't like that. Mars can be any distance from the sun. So yeah, but we have a nice kind of unity of the two poles of Venus and Mars. So a really nice chance to maybe activate the power of polarity. If you're into polarity in relationships, obviously that can get like extremely gendered and patriarchal really, really fast. But if you're into playing with polarity, maybe in some of your like romantic relationships, but also maybe in platonic relationships, that could be an interesting time to just work also just with the concept of like divine union and the union of the masculine and feminine inside of you. But then I also just want to, just remind you, if you've forgotten, about the Jupiter Chiron square. Since Chiron is stationing right now, this square is also very activated, and I've talked about it multiple times, but basically somewhere in your chart and in your life, there is an experience of expansion that Jupiter is bringing in, widening something, asking you to stretch somewhere, and then the act of allowing that stretch to happen, the act of receiving from Jupiter in Cancer, is going to be activating something that feels pretty woundy over here where Chiron is in late Aries. So Chiron stations direct on the 2nd of January. So here's that exact chart. My Venus is at 22 degrees of Aries, and for whatever reason, Chiron has actually been here 4 times. Like, it was already did a 3-part crossover, and now it's back again, and like, what the fuck? It's really painful, honestly. But yeah, if you have any like planets at 22, 23, 24, the cardinal signs, they're really getting it from this T-square. So anyway, it's again just kind of an interesting situation. We had a similar thing back in the fall when a couple of the personal planets were in Libra and they were moving through an alignment to the Chiron-Jupiter square at the time that it was first exact. And this just basically brings these kind of bigger energies that are in the background of your experience, or, they're kind of bigger than anything you can take and hold in your own hand and like guide with your own will. It gives you a chance to influence them or work with them very directly when you channel them through these personal planets. So if you know what the Chiron-Jupiter square is about for you, if you start thinking about Capricorn and like where, to me, these planets look like it's somewhere in your life that you can like pick up a load and like walk with that load for a while, or like, you might be dragging the load from one place to another, and it's kind of heavy and it's hard work, but all these Capricorn planets, like, they got it, and you just got to get that load around the corner of the T-square. So just very, very big shifting energies, I would say, kind of life-changing energies coming in the beginning of January, and we're just in the build up to that right now. So be very gentle with yourself wherever Chiron's wounding is impacting you. I find that with Chiron, usually the best advice is to do less. I always say don't try to run on a broken leg. If you have a wound somewhere, don't expect it to be suddenly healed. Just be very gentle and compassionate. Your natal Chiron might also be activated. I found this particularly true with Chiron, although I think it's true with all outer planets, but it might be kind of just where Chiron, how, close or far Chiron is in terms of like how it impacts our personal experience. But I find that when Chiron is stationing, natal Chiron is also very, very activated for me personally. Okay, that's all I got, I think, for the current transits. If I've missed anything, let me know here. But yeah, there'll be more to talk about as we go on. Brittany asked about the Venus star points. No. Somebody gave me some information about that once, like a 1-pager or something, and I tried to understand it and couldn't understand like what the Venus star points really were. I sort of understood, but then I like couldn't get the there was some stuff I wasn't understanding. Always more to look into with astrological techniques and ways of tracking transits and stuff like that. I am really not like the focus of my research and like my astrological education has been so much on the outer planets that I'm like not super educated really on like a lot of the nuances of the inner planet cycles. I do know the basics, and I guess more people talk about that than they used to, but like we should really talk about that actually. I'll see if I can get on at some point to talk about the Mars and Venus synodic cycles, because they are really, really interesting to track, and that would be very useful to be paying attention to over the next little while. But anyway, I think that's all I got here. Let's get on to the juice of this live stream. So I don't know how much y'all are following the Epstein stuff. There's obviously a lot of news to be keeping track of right now, and the Epstein stuff is bizarre and overwhelming, and it's insane. It's really crazy how they've just like dumped these the amounts of documents that have been dumped, mostly by the Democrat House Oversight Committee, but also there's just been leaks, continuous leaks, and like different, journalists that are collaborating with, I guess, like the sources of the leaks. So like different journalists will be working with like different emails. But it's the amount of material is extremely overwhelming, and the material is also bizarre. And I have not, done much going through it on my own. But I did want to show you guys, in case you didn't know about this, did you know about Gmail? So this is a miraculous thing that somebody did. There is like whole teams of people, I guess, who are working on making all the files searchable. So they have really done a really amazing job here. So the House Oversight Committee, and I think when hackers have released emails too, they just dump all the documents. And like I was, I pulled something up from the original page a week or two ago on this stream, and you could see that it's just like, text and a lot of text that is code or whatever, like, and you just see the text of the emails there. So it's very like not easy to go through. But somebody made this thing called Gmail, and you can just go to it. Anyone can go to it. It's gmail.world, and they just made like a Gmail inbox where you can go through all his emails. You can star the emails that are like most important. So then they have a thing like this is the emails in order of stars. So this is the one that we looked at last time that asks about, it's between him and his brother, and asks if Putin has the photos of Trump blowing Bubba, which probably is a joke, probably is not a real thing. But So, the most people starred that, but then there's these other ones that people have starred, and then you can search by contact, and then there's this stuff at the bottom where you can look at his drive, you can look at all the creepy ass photos. There's just a ton of photos they made that you can search by person in the photos. There's a thing, where is the Amazon, where you can look at his Amazon purchases. A lot of fucking toys and his Amazon purchases, which is weird. And then I haven't looked at, this is new, I guess maybe you can look at his Spotify. Message attributions are not, I haven't clicked on this yet. So maybe there's some text messages that are in the documents. I mean, you could spend days here if you were interested in this stuff. But it's really amazing that somebody made this, and it's just so hilarious. There he is. And oh, dark humor is all we got here, right, guys? Let me get out of this. Hopefully you could still hear me while I had that up. Yeah, I mean, if you've been here for a little while, I've been talking about Epstein on this channel for a while, and I've been talking about who Epstein worked for a while. And, I've done a good amount of research on him. I've read Whitney Webb's 1,000-page book that's just really deeply researched, story that leads up to Epstein, but goes deep into the history of the organized crime that he's connected to. So I thought I kind of knew. I thought I kind of had a general idea of how bad things were, what it was and what it wasn't, what was ridiculous conspiracy theories. But I don't think I think that it's worse than I thought. And someday when I have my thoughts more clear on this, and maybe when I've looked through the pictures and seen, kind of what my intuition says about some stuff, I'll come on a members only live stream to talk more about this stuff. But I have my own idea from research that I've done about the nature of sexual blackmail operations and how they work, and what is really on offer. And it's the emphasis is not always on children, basically, because not everybody wants children. Not everybody can be compromised with children. And my impression of Epstein was that it was, what are they there's a word, amoebophile, that's not it, but there's some word that sometimes pedophiles try to use to distinguish between themselves if they like adolescents instead of prepubescent children. And that kind of seemed more what it was. But, and not that that's okay, right? But in terms of the stuff that goes deeper in terms of SRA and more kind of ritual stuff and stuff really involving children. Anyway, I my thoughts are not clear enough to say more than that, but it just seems way worse really than I thought. So someday I'll come on and say more about that. But also Whitney Webb's book, she really documents everything extremely meticulously, and I have heard some people who've dug into her sources make some criticisms, but in general she documents everything so meticulously, and she really doesn't, for the most part, she kind of stays away from stuff about Epstein that was really salacious rumors or whatever, because everything she was drawing from is actually documented, either in testimony or in actual documents that she got her hands on. So I think that some of the more salacious stuff, some of the weirder, grosser, creepier stuff, actually didn't make it into that book because there's less documentation of it. But yeah, if you start looking through those pictures and stuff, it is weird. It is weird shit. So today we're going to talk about Noam Chomsky, who some might know has shown up in the Epstein files. And in particular, there's a picture of him on Epstein's plane. So this is the picture that's kind of like floating around. This is interesting, right? Noam Chomsky, kind of a hero of the left and someone who's known for having clear eyes about Israel-Palestine and the occupation. And on Epstein's plane, like, what is this? I think probably he's not a pedophile, but still, this is very weird. So you can look on Gmail. I'll actually pull that up again here, because you can see Noam Chomsky. Let's see if there's any other pictures. There's Chomsky and Bannon goofing around, and then Chomsky and Epstein. And then let's go back to the email. So, you can look, I looked through, or I didn't actually look through these, but I saw a video where somebody was talking about them, and like, they're just mostly like friendly emails. This Noam Chomsky and his wife and a couple, including Ehud Barak, from 2015. So yeah, but this is just very interesting. And I'm not here to like make a case like for or against anything to do with Chomsky or like defend him or whatever. I don't think that he was a pedophile. I don't think that that's what he was doing with Epstein, but it is interesting to look at his chart because we can see where his ego is, and we can see where he was actually probably like very easily compromised. You just see email? What do you mean? When I showed that Gmail? Let me know, Marie. I don't know exactly what you're talking about. But yeah, so Noam Chomsky was a professor at MIT, which was one of the main places that Jeffrey Epstein was courting intellectuals and scientists. And it isn't surprising that they would have had some overlap. But people knew, especially by the time of these emails, 2015, 2016, 2017, like people knew that, Epstein had already been arrested and released a long time ago. Oh, so tell me, are you not hearing me when I pull the emails, when I have this Gmail up? You should be, because I even put the mic on here. Hopefully that's working. But yeah, so I mean, he also, Noam Chomsky, like it would have made sense for them to have some overlaps, but also like Noam Chomsky is not an idiot and would have known like Epstein's reputation. You can go look, there's statements he's made about it, like you can go look it up. I'm again not here to like really tell the story or make any judgments one way or another. But his astrology is very interesting in particular for a linguist. Let's see. Okay. So let's just start with his natal chart. So we've got a lot in Sagittarius. The South Node, Mercury, and the Sun all in Sag in the 12th. Sag rising. Saturn, Sagittarius. We've got a Libra moon in the 10th. We've got Mars retrograde in Cancer in the 7th house. Venus in Capricorn. Uranus on the IC. Jupiter is the ruler of the chart, and Jupiter is over here conjunct Chiron in Taurus. Not quite, well, yeah, close enough to be conjunct. In the 5th. So you might already be noticing, especially if you know a little bit about Noam Chomsky, you might be noticing that there's almost no air in this chart. The only air we've got is the Libra moon and this Gemini north node, 0 degrees of Gemini. Nodes at 0 degrees. Very interesting placement. We've got the north node ruled by Mercury, but then we've got Mercury back over here in Sagittarius. And then nothing in Virgo except Neptune squaring the nodes, which is interesting in itself. So I'll say a little more about that. But, just off the bat, that's interesting for somebody who's known as a linguist, right? It's interesting that you wouldn't see many air placements. It's interesting that you have not only not a Mercury ruled chart, but you have your, north node ruled by Mercury, and then Mercury like tucked away in Sagittarius in the 12th house. Like it doesn't really look like an active, Mercury placement. So for me looking at this, I see, first of all, like a lot of ego. And I also see someone who was very susceptible actually to being swayed relationally. So I think, the Libra moon in the 10th, like Libra moon in general, especially top of the chart, like it wants to look good. It wants to be liked and respected professionally. It cares a lot about that, actually. You'd think someone like Noam Chomsky, like, maybe he'd have a I don't give a fuck kind of attitude, but no, he definitely did not with this, maybe some layers, but this Libra moon in the 10th, like his core self definitely cares a lot about his reputation and how people perceive him and whether they like him and whether they're pleased with him. And then Mars retrograde in the 7th in Cancer. This is also just a very susceptible placement to being swayed by the agendas of others. People with natal Mars retrograde, it can be hard for them to really assert themselves and assert their own will. And I have seen, Noam Chomsky is just another example. I've seen lots of examples of people with natal Mars retrograde who are very successful. So it's not that they can't, get somewhere in life. It's not that they can't use their Mars energy at all. But, a piece of that, if you have natal Mars retrograde, is you just have to figure out how you work. And it might be just different than other people in terms of like, I don't know, your hours, your, intensity, the timing of when you work, how you focus, like all of that just might be a little unusual and unconventional, and you have to kind of figure that out. But also, like, you see very successful people with this placement, but there'll be people who overextend themselves and who kind of, work all the time and don't know when to stop and aren't able to have kind of boundaries with Mars. They'll be like not as in touch with their own kind of working rhythms. And again, like this placement, especially in the 7th house, especially in Cancer, so relational, it's going to be easily swayed by especially people that know how to like cozy up to it. And Lord knows Jeffrey Epstein knew how to do that. Like that was what he did, was like, seduce people, basically. Even if he wasn't seducing people for sexual blackmail directly, he was in lots of other ways, right? Also trying to have people under his influence and under his wing. And scientists and high-level people at MIT were like very high on that list. And so Noam Chomsky is actually super susceptible to somebody coming in all relationally and especially probably really flattering him and that kind of thing. Really not actually someone who's able to like set boundaries very well, probably. And then also all this Sag and then all these placements in the 12th house are really interesting. To me, that tells me that his insights were more channeled than logically arrived at. that's great. That's not necessarily a problem. Come back to that in a second. So we you can also just see that like all this fire, it wouldn't be surprising if this person has a big ego, thinks highly of themselves, believes in themselves. Sagittarius, is very passionate in its belief in whatever it believes in, and you have the sun and the rising sign together there in Sag, like that could be a person who's full of themselves. And, I don't want to insult anyone if you have Sag rising and a ton of Sag placements. I'm actually thinking of someone I know. I haven't seen her for a long time, but super duper Sag, like awesome woman, as far as I know. Anyway, all experiences that I've had with her doesn't seem like someone who has, a bad ego, huge ego or anything, but shadow sides to everything. And, again, if you're somebody with the stature, the status of Noam Chomsky and has achieved what he has, whether or not you really did the work that deserved what you've achieved or not, doesn't really matter. These Sagittarius planets are going to be a pretty big sense of self that doesn't want to, have to like dim its light or admit any wrongdoing. And okay, and I should be clear that I have not read Chomsky. If I had read him, I would obviously have a much better and different critique, because I would have actually experienced his communication style, and I would have actually kind of like absorbed what was coming through his brain when he wrote about manufacturing consent and other things. So this analysis is very lacking because I have not read him. But I would guess that his breakthrough ideas, and I know manufacturing consent is a big one, there's probably some others too, but his big ideas, somebody with all these 12th house placements probably feels these big ideas like pressing in on their spirit and believes that because this is what Sagittarius does, they believe that they have something very important, very vital, very transformative to share that, needs to emerge from the 12th house into the rest of the world. And, he did have ideas that were transformative and that have changed the way that a lot of people think. And, he would obviously not be the first person who has channeled powerful transformative ideas and also been like not that good of a person, right? He would not be the first one. So that's what I see with all these 12th house placements, is that his insights and breakthroughs like came probably, from the spirit world. Who knows? Like maybe they even came from dreams or, from other kind of mystical experiences, but they were not arrived at just through logic and study and intellect. So the North Node in Gemini in the 6th house is a really interesting placement, though, because obviously this is where your eyes are going to go if you open the chart and you're like looking at, a linguist chart. Like you're going to notice this here. I have seen, I wish I had other examples of this, because I know I've seen it a bunch of times in famous people's charts where the North Node kind of like takes off and kind of like runs away with the chart. So almost, I feel like in, the vast majority of client readings, when you talk about the North Node, most of the time that's a place where people actually don't spend that much time, because the North Node is a little bit edgy. Like we always feel like we're a little bit of a novice there, and, it depends what planets are around the North Node. It depends on a lot of things, whether somebody's going to spend a lot of time in that area of the chart. But for your average person, the North Node is an area that's not so comfortable. And so sometimes it's a little bit neglected, or like we don't work as hard to develop that part of ourselves, and we prioritize other aspects of our chart, whether we're consciously doing that with astrology or not. But with famous people, there's multiple examples, but this is the only one I've got right now, but I know I've seen it a bunch of other times, of the North Node becoming like a head without a body. So in Vedic astrology, they talk about Rahu and Ketu. Like Ketu is the tail of the dragon, the South Node, and Rahu is the head of the dragon. And so the North Node sometimes becomes that head of the dragon that just kind of like takes off and like ends up just running away with the whole chart and like the person's life. And so I feel like Noam Chomsky is a manifestation of that, because this North Node in Gemini ended up being like what he's known for. He's a writer, obviously, which makes a lot of sense with Gemini in the 6th house. He's also a speaker, a teacher, a communicator in various ways. And then he writes on the subject of communication and language and storytelling. And, so this part of the chart kind of like took over. That's also kind of what it looks like to me. And also, this is a Gemini descendant, right? So he's got Mars and Cancer in the 7th. A part of his relationality is Cancerian, so it's very emotional and deep. But another part of his relationality is Gemini. So this kind of placement is not afraid of having relationships, friendships with all different types of people. And probably just like enjoys chatting with people, getting information from people, learning about people. Gemini is always very curious, and it likes to just like accumulate information. So he probably, did bring that in as well to his working relationships. Probably had relationships with all kinds of people, but Gemini can be deceitful, and this is also the kind of energy that could like find a way to excuse through kind of language and stories, find a way to excuse any unsavory relationships or associations that he ended up with. So, okay. And then also, though, we have this North Node kind of running away with the chart, running away with like what he's known for, what he does with his life and his energy. But the North Node is ruled by Mercury, which is back over here in the 12th in Sagittarius. And this placement, Mercury and Sag in the 12th, like it is not really interested in details. It's not really the most meticulous Mercury. And so to be honest, this Mercury plus Neptune in the 9th squaring the nodes, this chart just makes me have some questions about his academic integrity. And, I don't even know what that means. Again, I haven't read him, but these two factors just make me question something, about his integrity as an academic. So like this Mercury, again, is just like not scrupulous or meticulous. And his work, as far as I know, is known for being that, or at least coming across that way. But he may not. Also, it's sort of like his work being very mental and analytical. He may not be concerned so much on a deep level about like the integrity or like the moral imperatives of his work. Like his ego could kind of take that over. Yeah, and then Neptune here in the ninth in Virgo. So the ninth house is where the academy sits, right? The ninth house is where higher education, the institution of the university, lives in the ninth house. And Neptune here, this is also just a little shady. Something feels shady to me about, I mean, in general, like, we know these days that, like, for the most part, the institution of higher academia is corrupt and is shady and probably is run by pedophiles. I mean, you have Larry Summers there, who was like was he dean of Harvard or something big at Harvard, who was like huge in the Epstein files. So, you know, that's not a surprising thing, but it is just like right here in Chomsky's chart. And I don't know specifically. I'm not saying anything specifically that this is referring to, but it's just like things are kind of, well, and in terms of like what Epstein was doing and his involvements with the academic space is like he would make big donations to different departments. And, you know, he would win people over that way, and he would gain influence that way. He would gain access that way. So, you know, there is just a lot of that in general in the space of academia, like shady funding and shady influence. And there's shady science, you know, all the eugenics and all that stuff that Epstein was really, really interested in. But with Virgo, with Neptune and Virgo here, we're talking more about like shady intellect, shady communication, shady theory, which is Noam Chomsky's thing, right? And then this is the only other Mercury ruled planet in the chart. And here it is, just like, yeah, looking real shady. So again, like, this would be a much better critique if I had read him, and I don't know if I really ever will, because honestly, when I came into leftist thought, I was already kind of hearing, like, the people that I was listening to, like, 4-ish years ago when I was coming into leftist thought were already critiquing Chomsky, although I can't even really remember what for at this point. But I think there's some places where and I think even on stuff like 9/11, there's some stuff that he just like doesn't have an open mind about, or doesn't want to see like the deeper, darker realities. Okay, couple other pieces here. The ruler of this chart is Jupiter. Jupiter is down here in Taurus in the 5th house with Chiron. This is a thing that I have seen that I've never seen anyone else talk about this, but I would be curious if you guys have seen other astrologers make this kind of connection. I have seen a lot of 5th house planets in other famous people's charts, and I feel like the 5th house for people with a lot of money refers to the stock market and to investments and the sort of gambling, because traditionally gambling falls into the 5th house, and you know the stock market is really just gambling. So I think also like insider trading, when people do that kind of falls into the 5th house. So I feel like this is another it really points to another weak spot of Chomsky's. Jupiter, ruler of the chart, is conjunct Chiron in Taurus. Like, I think that he just probably was more seduced by money and wealth and more kind of concerned with that and with material status in general than we would like to think that a leftist would be. This feels deep to me, and like I would like to do more research into Noam Chomsky's life to have more of a sense of what this might be about, because it also probably relates to things like his relationship with his own body and his sexuality, that kind of stuff. But I wouldn't be surprised if one layer of it was insider trading in the stock market, and then here's this exact trine to this shady Neptune up here in the 9th. So Uranus on the IC is interesting. This usually indicates there's some kind of like revolutionary sentiment in the ancestry. And, just glancing at his Wikipedia, there's nothing, doesn't seem, too like unusual anything in his immediate ancestry, but it doesn't go back any further than his parents. So I don't know. This is another thing that could be looked into more. This Uranus squares this Mars. There's going to be a lot of really personal stuff, that this has manifested as for him too, that would probably not be in any kind of public record. And then, so the last thing that I'll show you guys here is the transits, because what's happening right now as this stuff is coming out is Uranus has been transiting this North Node. So it's activating this part of the chart that has dominated his whole life, basically. It's revealing some kind of two-sidedness, right? It's revealing like this other face of Noam Chomsky that people who see him as an important like leader or figure like do not want to see that other face. And it'll be just interesting to see how the rest of this transit carries out over the spring, because there may be more that comes out. I mean, the man is 100, 98. He's 98. So like he probably not super, super concerned about his like, what's happening with his reputation. But then again, he's probably is super concerned because he has a big ego and the Libra moon in the 10th house. So I don't know. He's also got some IC transits coming up this year. Almost his second Chiron return. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if he makes it through these transits to the IC. All right. I think that's all I got, guys. I haven't looked at the chat for a little while. Let me see. So you guys couldn't see the Gmail. You couldn't see when I opened another site, maybe. Can you see this? Oh my God, what is this? Oh my God, sorry. Jesus Christ. I don't know if you saw that. Let me know if you saw that. Yeah, it is weird, actually. It doesn't. I'm looking at my own stream. Yeah, maybe that's so weird. Well, yeah, maybe it is some security or something. Okay. Can you see my cursor on the screen there? Well, you should go check out jmail.world yourself. Okay, I will pull some cards for us this week, and then I will not be on live for the next 2 Sundays. If I get Doomer Astrology 2026 done, I'll try to do that as a premiere some Sunday evening in the next couple weeks. When I am back, I will be in a different location, and I'll give you guys more information about what I'm doing when I'm there. Yeah, but I think I need a little break from this, and it's possible we'll change the timing. It's possible I'm going to do some other time besides Sunday nights when I get started again, just based on how my schedule changes, but we'll see. So let's get some cards for the week. As usual, we'll get an alchemy card and an archetype card. Our alchemy card is the Ouroboros. And our archetype card is the desert. Looks like an interesting week. So the Ouroboros, if I'm saying that right, is the all-encompassing glyph of the alchemical process. The hungry snake bends itself around you in a gesture of protection and guardianship, giving you the space and safety to participate in the work. Anything and everything can be offered into its mouth for transformation. Good, bad, blasphemous, or precious, the materials of our life transmutate into gems along the great serpent's spine. Along with your woes, the Ouroboros engulfs every pair of opposites. What is masculine becomes feminine, what is sky becomes earth, what is past becomes future. When this card appears, you have entered the quantum realm. Everything is a possibility. No one knows the limits of the Ouroboros. Just when you fell into thinking that your life was straightening out, the snake takes you once again into its gaping mouth for an entirely new trajectory. In the desert, the drought, the wasteland, the badlands. The desert leaves us disoriented, desperate for direction, grasping for meaning, longing for solid ground. For endless miles, we are confronted with a lack of clarity and existential dread. We are thirsty, hungry, pleading with life to get back to normal, to become animated by the simple pleasantries of day-to-day life. The desert offers no such comfort, and all must pass through it. If you can embrace the discomfort of the desert, knowing you will someday reach water again, you can tap into the potent energy of the landscape. Its lights are blindingly bright and its darks terrifyingly deep, which makes for unbridled creativity and clairvoyant visions. Truths reside in the desert that otherwise remain hidden. The crows, the shadows, and the coyotes' call surround you. Let the winds and sands work their deep magic, weary traveler. Well, feels like very liminal energies in both of these cards. Kind of a moment of being in between, kind of a magician moment or a void moment. Yeah, I hope those messages are helpful to you. As always, email me at collapseastrology@gmail.com if you have suggestions for what I should cover. Any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. And I think this is it. So I will see you all next year. But possibly, well, I won't be back with Doomer Astrology 2026 before the new year, but hopefully maybe by next Sunday. All right. Lots of love, y'all. Good night.